Welcome back to the Made to Be Men podcast. Today, I want to talk about the importance of integrity and why we as men need to have integrity. And I want to start by just sharing a short story with you. About a year ago, I was driving home late at night. The car needed petrol, so I stopped at the next service station. And as you probably know, service station petrol prices are much higher than normal. So I put in £20 worth of petrol and I had a £10 note on me. So I wanted to pay half of it in cash and the rest on card. So I went inside to pay for the petrol. I gave the cashier the £10 note and expected her to then ask me to pay the rest, at which point I would say, could I please pay on card? But she thought I paid for all of it with that £10 note. She cashed the £10 and just said thank you. So I started walking away thinking I just got £20 worth of petrol for £10, feeling quite pleased with myself. And then as I was walking out, I just felt the Holy Spirit stop me. So I stopped right at the doorway in the petrol station. There was automatic doors and I just stopped with them just open. And I stood there probably for about 30 seconds. And what was going through my mind was, firstly, that it was only £10. It's a small amount, and I thought the company wouldn't miss it. Why does it matter? And then I thought about the fact that they're charging so high a price for petrol anyway, so I probably deserve to have that extra £10 of petrol. But then the Holy Spirit said to me, is your integrity only worth £10? Then I thought to myself, I can't do this. I'm a man of integrity. Even in this small thing with this small amount, my integrity is worth much more than that. So I went back inside and just said to the cashier, I don't think I paid the correct amount, and then I paid the rest on card. So it raises the question, what is our integrity worth? And just so you know what I'm talking about when I say integrity, a commitment or adherence to godly values without compromise. That's integrity. It's effectively living a godly life at all times, no matter who's watching. So that was a moment that the importance of integrity really hit me. Because the question is, what is our integrity really worth? So here's a few things I've learned about the importance of integrity. The first is that a man without integrity is a man with no awareness of the presence of God. The reason I stopped in that petrol station and went back and paid is because I had an awareness of God and a sensitivity to the Holy Spirit. There's a man in the Bible called Joseph, and he probably had as many reasons as anyone to justify not having integrity. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers. He was enslaved by an Egyptian. He was falsely accused and imprisoned for years for something he didn't do. Yet through all of that, he lived with the utmost integrity in his life. There's one particular moment where the wife of his Egyptian slave master tried to seduce him. And most men in that situation would probably think, why not? I'm enslaved by this Egyptian. This is probably a good way for me to get back at him for what he's done to me. I'm a slave anyway, so it's probably not important what I do whilst I'm a slave. But Joseph refused to do it, and there's something very interesting that he said. He said, how could I do this wicked thing and sin against God? He had an awareness of God that caused him to maintain his integrity. There's a quote I've heard before that says, the reason not to cheat is not because you're afraid of someone walking in and catching you. It's because God's already in the room with you. Integrity is about living with an awareness of God's presence. Another reason integrity is so important is because anything we do in the physical has repercussions in the spiritual. Sometimes we think, because no one saw me do this thing, then it's fine. I've got away with it. There's no consequences. But really, there's always consequences in the spiritual. Everything you do, whether seen or unseen, is either yielding you to God or yielding you to sin. So even if no one is looking, if you compromise your values, you are yielding to sin. And by doing so, you give Satan a doorway into your life. Having integrity is about yielding to God at all times. It's about living unto God and not unto people. And the last thing I want to highlight about why it's important is because when you keep your integrity in the small things, you're showing God you can be trusted with more. Some people think the small things are not important. So if it's only £10 that you lie to get, or if it's just a small thing, then it's okay because it's not really hurting anyone. It hasn't done much damage. But if it was £1,000 or £10,000 on the line, they would see that as more important, so they think they would have integrity with that amount. The truth is, if you compromise when there's very little on the line, you'll definitely compromise when there's much more on the line, because you'll have even more of an incentive to compromise. Why would God trust you to be honest with £1 million if you haven't been honest with £10? There's a parable in Matthew chapter 25 where it talks about men who were given different amounts of talents, and the ones who were faithful with what they were given were then given more. And that's why in verse 29, in one version it says, "Those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance." Part of using well what you are given is using it with integrity. So if we want to be men who can be trusted, whether it's with money, whether it's with people, whether it's with a family, we need to maintain our integrity in the small things first. Let's aim to be men who keep our word, who do the right thing even when no one's watching, who live with an awareness of the presence of God. That's integrity.